Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast, where we focus on creating positive, productive, and profitable workplaces. I am your host, Michael Sherlock. I am a leadership and sales expert, best known for being serious about business, despite what you may think by my appearance of often very colorful hair and sometimes crazy shoes. My guests bring a wealth of information that will support your career and your business, along with many pearls of wisdom to support balance in your personal and professional lives. Listen in as I have another amazing conversation with a guest who will certainly shock your potential. Daniel Mangena is, he had a couple things that, probably threw him for a loop. He had a late diagnosis of Asperger syndrome, and he had what he can just describe as life-shattering trauma at the age of 20. And for the next several years after those two big events, especially, he really struggled to not only kind of keep those events, from running over into every other aspect of his life, but really to hold himself together as well. And I think he's going to talk quite a bit about how he dealt with things that we've talked about on this podcast before, things like suicidal thoughts and really having to figure out how to deal with trauma in your life. But he's built a simple 4-step system called the Beyond Intention Paradigm that I know we're going to talk a little bit about. And by doing this, he not only helps others, but he himself found a way to find lasting joy and purpose. And it really, truly did save his life. Now, he's also a multi-author, individual. And he's also, I don't know what multi-author is. He's written many books. He's written a whole lot of stuff. And he has his own podcast, which is called Do It With Dan, and which is obviously going to be a lot of fun too. So I don't know if I can put more into that intro, Daniel, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here.
Don't you just sit there when people are reading your bio and you're like, why did I get
you know what? It's I always say I'm going to shrink it down. I don't know how to shrink it down. What am I going to do? I need to shrink myself. I'm not really sure how it works, but there we go. We're here.
I find sometimes I get these bios and there's just like with yours, there's so many like really important critical pieces of information that I can't let them go. Everybody's got to know. I got to put them all in there. So it's just the highlights. Tell us in your own words a little bit more about you, your business, and how you help your clients to shock their potential.
Looking at how things didn't work with me was where it really started. And seeking to understand how things didn't work with me. Mm-hmm. And then I like repeatable. If something's not repeatable for me, it doesn't really count. When people are like, oh, there's the law of this and the law of that. Okay, but is it repeatable? If it's not repeatable, then what's the point,
Right.
And what I've done is I've gone through, the 20 odd years I've been in this kind of crazy stuff that we do now with, mindfulness and consciousness and all this stuff. And just looking at what actually works repeatedly. I'm an avid student of life, and I'm always learning and in new modalities and always investing myself and doing new things. And then what is repeatable? What is something that can be applied to different people from all walks of life? And what aspects of those can be distilled into something simple, like Beyond Intention? It's 4 steps, 4 words to remember. Accept, clear, gratitude, listen. Accept, clear, gratitude, listen. 4 words. Is there more to it? Yes, there's like 7 levels to each one and it goes into the thing, but ultimately it's, can I remember these 4 things? When I come against a stuck state, when I come against resistance, when I come against an intention or a choice, can I walk through these 4 things and move through them with grace and ease? So what I love to say is I love to empower people to deliberately choose a more abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life, because choice is where it's at. And when we can have dominion over those choices and deliberately direct that dominion to outcomes that we actually want, then we can have an abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life. And that's what I like to do.
I love that so much, and I was just talking with somebody and she said, in fact, it's the episode, what we named her episode is, she said, abundance is my birthright. And it really stuck with me.
I say that too.
You say that too? Oh my gosh.
I love it already. I love it already. Yeah.
And it to me, it was just this sense of, and she wasn't there all the time either. She talks
Mm-hmm.
about, going through postpartum depression and not really liking herself and not knowing herself. And, for her to get to that point and say, abundance is my birthright. I was like, that's powerful. But to your point, it is a choice. We have to make a conscious choice to recognize that abundance, to open up our hearts to let it in.
Mm-hmm. People love to talk about. I did a LinkedIn live about this. They talk about divine plans, divine
Mm.
time. So, are we saying that God and the universe is a tyrant that decides what we get and what we don't get? And if that's the
Mm.
case, then why should we bother setting it? I should just lie in bed and wait for what the universe or God's going to come with. I feel like
Exactly.
going to the pub. I'm going to go and do that until God decides what I'm going to get. But when we look at reality, without even getting into the mysticism and the esoterics behind these ideas and the truth of what actually they say, before we even go down that rabbit hole, if we just look at reality and what science actually continues to demonstrate in terms of the dominion that we actually have over what we experience, what we live, then that's just not the way it works. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not the way it works. We experience what we resonate with, what we allow, and then what we embody. That's what we experience. And if we start to choose what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and therefore, and what we're doing, what we're embodying, then we can actually deliberately experience things. We don't have to have the dark side of pain, because pain does have a purpose in many respects. We don't have to be in lack, because abundance is our birthright. Just look at nature.
Mm-hmm.
There is no lack in nature. Nature is always overflowing and abundant. When humans get involved, then maybe things go out of whack. But generally speaking, nature, when left to its own devices, is always abundant. So abundance is the natural order of the universe. It always has everything that it needs and is more. It's always expanding and growing. So it's just a matter of choosing to be in the flow of that and not holding these limited ideas and narratives about, only when I finish doing that, and I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm this or I'm the other thing. We let go of these ideas and just come to the truth of abundance is the natural way of things. Everything has a purpose, and that purpose is to expand and have more life and to offer more life to others and to be a conduit for God, the universe source, to give more life to others. If we do that, we're going to be in a space of joy, because we're going to be in a natural. Look at children naturally, when they come out, what do they want to do? They want to giggle, they want to laugh, they want to,
Yeah.
because joy is a natural. It's natural and normal, and I want to see more people normalizing that.
I so agree. And I think it's so easy at times to get pulled into negativity or looking at things from the opposite side. Everybody who listens to my podcast or knows me at all knows that I watch Good Morning America. It's like this thing that I do. I don't know why. It's just part of my routine. But over the last year, there have been many times that I've just turned it off
Mm,
because I can't I can't have day after day, minute after minute of bad news
mm.
or the things about every time I see a death toll on something, I'm like, death tolls only go up. They don't go down. Like, so why do I want to see it keep going? And I
Yeah.
think that it's easy to slide into those things. And I want to dive into this a little bit more because as you talk about, let's see if I got it right. Accept, clear, gratitude, and listen. Right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, forwards.
But the hardest one is the one you put first, and that's accept.
You know, I love to say that reality creation, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yep.
Because the thing is that if we accept ourselves and all our awesomeness, then nothing can stop us stepping into more awesomeness. And acceptance is just a question of acceptance, making the choice to accept ourselves, whole and complete, perfect in our imperfections. But then
Mm-hmm.
shame gets in the way or blame gets in the way.
Mm.
I would take responsibility for this, but if it wasn't for who was this or that was that, or that my mum did this, or is when we transcend that, step up to the plate and say, do you know what? I may not like everything that's been up until now, but I'm sure we're going to make sure everything that comes from now is something that I love. I may not love who I've always been, but I'm going to love myself now so that I can go on to make choices to be a person I can love and be proud of. I may have some shame around that, but I'm going to love myself even in spite of that, come to a space of wholeness and go on and allow those scars to be battle scars of a victory won.
I love that idea of thinking about your scars as reminders of a battle that you won.
Mm.
because it's easy to look at a scar, literally or figuratively and say, oh, look, isn't that great that I got that? But if you didn't have it, you didn't win the war.
It's a reminder. It can be a reminder. I mentioned briefly about pain earlier. Pain's not a negative thing. It's a signal. It's a signal that life is being brought to life. A headache could be an indication, the body telling you, go and have a rest, go and drink some water. Hunger pains, go and eat some food. I need something. It's just a signal, but the narrative that we attach to that signal dictates whether we suffer or whether we're being guided into something better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with those scars. They can be just a reminder of a battle won versus, oh my God, that time in my life. You're here, bro. You're alive. You made it through. Celebrate, stop, celebrate.
That's true. Absolutely true. As you were talking about, hunger, headache, all those things. I'm like, what does it tell you when you have red licorice on your desk all day? Oh, I can't eat that right now because I'm taping. It tells me that I have to have delayed gratification, that I have a sugar issue.
Timing.
Exactly. My husband tells me I am not good at delayed gratification. And then he starts laughing. He's like, you are like there's no definition that is so opposite of delayed gratification than me. But I'm like, whatever.
I could say the thing about my wife as well, to be honest. Like,
I want what I want when I want it. What's the problem with that?
We love it anyway.
Well, and I really like, the thought process about, the narratives that we write and how we control those or not control them, but they are important stories that we have to either embrace, change, but I think we have to recognize the stories we tell ourselves, because they can either build us up or they can tear us down.
And that's where step 2 starts to come in. Because we have to be in a space where we can actually receive the information about those narratives to start making the choices. Step 1 of Beyond Intention is all about stepping into my power, stepping up to the plate, stepping into my power, accepting the mantle of creative dominion over my life. But then I need an actual, real, clean space. So real, because the now is real, past and future. Past is gone, future hasn't shown up yet. So I need to be now. And in the peace of the now, then I can start to listen in. We're listening more actively in step 4, but right now it's what's coming up that's blocking me, what's coming up that's to voice that resistance, what's standing in between me and what I want to experience, what I want to move into, and clearing the active process of letting go of the past, letting go of the future, and just coming to a whole and accepted presence within the now is what we do in step 2.
So is that part of that? So I like when you talk about having like a clean, empty, maybe not a clean slate, but you don't have so much garbage in the way.
Definitely a clean slate. You're on it. Clean slate. That's what it is. And that's an active process, It may mean moving myself from something physically. It may mean going and taking some time for myself. It may mean going for a run. It may mean doing some meditation or some breath work. It may mean going for a walk in the forest. It may mean washing the dishes. Everybody's got their own relationship to the peace and quiet of the now. I don't believe in cookie cutter approaches. I think that everybody's unique and has their own experiences, their own journeys that brings them to a place whereby they can actually create a personal relationship to the present moment. Breath work doesn't really work for me. I can do some of the stuff. My friend Lee's obsessed with it. I did one of his 9-hour breath work things last weekend. I was passed out by the end of it. Some people love it. He does it. He does stuff every day. I'm more the gentle stuff. Meditation, I do, religiously. Yoga, I do Kundalini yoga. I'm not as obsessed with it as I was at one time, but, I get my practices in. My wife, she'll meditate 3-4 times a day. She spends so much of her day meditating. She loves it. She's about it. I'm okay with like my morning and my evening. She's like, I need to do it all day long. But everybody's got their own thing. Some people it is going for a run. She likes to hike. We've got some mountains just behind us, some hills. She loves to go and hike in those. I'm not really into the hiking thing. Leave me on the beach. I'm cool. But once you start to build that relationship with yourself where you can understand your relationship to the now, you can step into it more effectively, on command, and enjoy your time there to create.
So then how does that move into gratitude?
Gratitude as a place and as an experience was the game changer for me in my journey. Because, I'd created a lot of really amazing stuff really, really quickly, really young. I started in sort of conscious creation about the age of 16 with goal setting and intention, and got into the esoterics and mysticism. And, I made everything, lost everything twice. By the age of 24, I've made and lost two multi-million pound fortunes, quite dramatically as well. It's actually quite funny how the whole thing happened now, he says. But at the time, it wasn't funny. At the time, it wasn't funny. But the thing that became the dividing line between what had worked and stopped working, now what can continue to work well over a decade for thousands of people around the world, is that gratitude comes before the experience.
Mm.
And the reason why gratitude comes before the experience is because everything's already here now. So when I step into gratitude, what I'm actually doing is connecting in an embodied fashion to the experience, and therefore allowing it to show up. So it creates positive expectation. It triggers the mind. Neural pathways in the brain actually get created when I'm grateful for something I haven't seen yet. It's displaying a level of faith and belief that goes beyond that which is seen. It's beyond the substance of things seen. It's a really powerful practice. And when properly done, and by properly done, just wholly, wholeheartedly, all of the heart thing, all of it in it, I'm so grateful that it's here now, because it is here now. It opens us up to experience it. So we accept our power, we create the clean space, and in that clean space, we step into what will it feel when I've actually started to experience that which I'm intending.
Yeah. And I can see how that becomes something that builds on itself. So, kind of like the more you have gratitude, the more you see as worthy of your gratitude, which means you're looking for it more, which means you experience more, which means you feel it more, and it
then you
just can
expect it
build and
more,
build.
and it just builds. It creates a momentum, a positive momentum, rather than the negative biased momentum that we often find ourselves in.
Yeah. I had to really practice that recently. We had a very traumatic event in our family, and
Sorry to hear that.
and it was very, yeah, it was really, it was very horrible, and still is horrible. But for the first few days, you can't sleep, you can't think, you can't, concentrate to find the joy, because you're like, how can there be any joy in something like this? And it was amazing that one day I just said, okay, you got to stop this. You can't have your head there. You need to find something to be grateful for. And I found what I needed to be grateful for in it. And it was like, wow, like all of a sudden, it's like it had been a cloudy day for weeks, and then the sun was out, that all of a sudden my head started to find more things to be grateful for. Because I'm a pretty grateful person and positive person around. And it was, when something can really
Knock you down.
get on you, like, a lot of your experiences that you've talked to, you've had some very heavy ones. And it's, once you can get out of it, I can see why that was the big turnaround for you. Once you can find that gratitude, then it starts to lift you with buoyancy.
And there's a really powerful lesson. I love to use this example. It's a quick story, so we're not going to drag. I was in an airport. This is a couple of years ago. I was on my journey when I just left my business, and I was like running around teaching. Oh, let's learn about beyond intention. I was in Oslo airport with someone with a relationship that was coming to the end. We weren't even really talking that week, and it was like, we're going to be stuck in. It was already a 3-hour wait for the next flight to New York. I was like, okay, 3 hours is cool. I can eat some food, blah, blah, blah. Get there, they say it's another 5 hours. So it's a total of 8 hours we're going to have to hang around in this airport. And my first thoughts were, oh my God, 8 hours, oh my God, and blah, blah, blah. And I was going to be flying Norwegian Air, and Norwegian Air is like budget, right? So like you have to order a blanket in advance or pay for it on the plane kind of budget. So I'm like, I'm going to have to be in the air for 6 hours. I've got my first ever workshop, Build Intention workshop, was the next morning in New York. So I was going to have to, it was not the best situation. And I started to go down this path, and I said, wait, find out why it's delayed. Not because to change it, but just find out why. So I went and found out why, and they said, we discovered engine failure. So I went from being crazy, like, oh my God, I've got to spend 8 hours and all the things, and to, I'm so grateful that I have to wait 5 hours because they found this thing. The point being that sometimes a situation looks like there is no space to find something to be grateful for. But here's the trick. At least that didn't happen, because it's not the worst thing that can happen.
Yes.
And we can always look to that as a starting point to start working backwards and looking for more things to be grateful for in the experience, even if the thing that we're grateful for is that it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Exactly. It's so true. Absolutely. And if that's the one, silver lining you can find, it's still a pretty big silver lining. It always makes me laugh when people in the airports are getting so upset because I'm like, if the plane was broken, I don't want to fly on it. If the weather's too bad that the pilots say they don't want to fly through it, I don't want to fly in it. So I'm okay.
And it's just these crazy things. I mean, I remember once in a workshop, someone was like, yeah, but my husband cheated on me. I said, did he give you an STD? No. Well, there's your gratitude point. Oh yeah. There's always somewhere to start. There's always
now,
somewhere
what
to
if she would have
start.
said yes? If she would have said yes, she'd be in
Did he get her
trouble.
pregnant? Did he get? There's always something to be grateful for. Always something. Always something.
Might have to have several questions.
Several
there,
questions, but
absolutely.
we'll find there. We'll find it.
Oh. Well, I know we still want to move on to our topic for the month, but just tell us a little bit about listen then as the last of your cornerstones.
Oh, yes, of course. Let's listen. Listen is just the active process of thinking and feeling with awareness. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And am I maintaining the course of what I've stepped into gratitude for? Have I veered off course? Do I need to make some adjustments? Do I need to step in and accept something else that's arisen? Do I need to clear on something else? Do I need to connect more deeply? Do I need to move on to the next step of gratitude? But thinking and feeling with awareness and staying in that space of what's going on internally, and am I still aligned with the outcome that I want to step into?
Yeah, so you're really listening to yourself very intently. Especially what's going on up here in the noggin that might not be even said out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Our internal chatter. I think this is fantastic. It's such a great reminder of what we can control in times, especially when we think we can't.
Do you know what I think is beautiful? It's that we can't control other people, but we do have dominion over how we're showing up. And because of the way the universe works in terms of what we are a vibrational match to, opens up the field as to what we can experience. When we lead internally, making love our mantra, making love our dominant frequency, it must start to have a knock-on effect with our environment. It has to. I don't know if you've ever seen the video on YouTube about the synchronous metronomes. So they've got like 20 different metronomes, and they're all out of sync. They're all incoherent, and there's one coherent metronome that's coherent. And what starts to happen is one by one, all of the surrounding metronomes come into coherence too, until all of the metronomes are coherently operating at the coherent frequency. Now, love, the frequency of love, and this isn't even a woo-woo thing, this is measurable now. When we're in a space of love, our energy field can be measured at a specific frequency. I think it's 963 hertz, I can't remember. But when we are in that emotional state, our measurable frequency becomes that state. And when we look in the brain actually starts to operate more coherently the closer we are to that frequency of love. When we're in other states, fear, doubt, anxiety, it's incoherence. That's why we feel off. And that's why we can feel the energy of someone being off, because it actually resonates and can be felt in the environment. That's why we don't want to be around people that are down and depressed. We want to be around people that are happy and enlightened, because we're called magnetically to those frequencies. So when I choose love as my dominant frequency, number one, my brain waves change and becomes coherent, which changes the choices I can make, which changes my quality of life. But from an energetic perspective as well, and not even in a woo-woo way, in a real way, it starts to change the world around us. Coherence, when entered into a coherent and incoherent space, it consumes incoherence. So when we bring the frequency of love into a situation and lead with it, it literally transforms the entire environment energetically, which changes it mentally, which changes it physically. So when we lead with love internally, we can change the world around us.
I've never ever heard it put that way, and it makes so much sense. Even when you're talking about sometimes when you feel anxiety or you feel anger from someone else, you cringe, you react, you have a response that is pulling you away from it. Nobody runs towards anger. Nobody runs towards, crankiness.
Exactly.
They want to run away or they want to protect themselves. But yet we do have people that operate that way, that operate that way in their business, and they either they don't see what they're doing to people around them or they don't care. I don't know. But you can always see when there's that person, you can bounce an idea off of. You know, you can talk to them about a struggle that you're having. You know that because you trust them, you feel safe when you're with them, and that builds more love and trust as well. I know we're going to have all of your information on our show notes. I hate to see this interview go because I just could talk to you forever. But in case somebody wants to look you up right now, what's the best way for them to find you?
Dreamwithdan.com. Everything's there. The books are there. The podcasts.
Do you have a jingle for that since you'd like to sing?
I actually have a song. I have a song for this rapper called Common. He's got a song called The Dreamer, and I just love it. And he's just talking about, you know, and so I've got that. I actually emailed them for permission. Hey, can I use your song? And they let me have it. And so we use that song on the jingle. But I think I might write a jingle though. I'll get the guitar out. Yes.
I love it. I think you should totally. Well, Dan, before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
Choices aren't always easy, but they're always available. So the choice to lead with love may not feel like the easiest choice, but it's an available choice. And if we make that choice to lead with love, accepting our capacity to do it, clearing the ways that we can step into it and connecting with what it would feel like, it would just change the world around us.
And amen to that. Let's continue to fill this world with as much love as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dan, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.